Hey everyone, Aisha here. Just wanted to join you in this video today, and I'm going to be super transparent and very real. Um, I feel some nervousness for doing this video, but according to Revelations 12:11, the Bible says we triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. And so I pray that me sharing my testimony with you today, if you are struggling in this particular area, I pray that me sharing my testimony and being transparent with you just gives you hope, gives you faith, and gives you peace to know that you can persevere whenever you feel like you are in a dark place. And so let me say this. As I was driving earlier today, I was just thinking about Daniel and the lion's den. For whatever reason, I was just really meditating on Daniel and the lion's den and how dark that pit must have been. Because when I look at the Jesus shows with my kids, we see Daniel going into the pit, and then the king and the guards putting a rock over the entrance of the cave, right? So Daniel can't get out. And so I was starting to think about it, how dark that must have been for Daniel. No light, the entrance is covered, pitch black, in there with lions, right? How that must have felt, how lonely that must have felt, how scary that must have felt, and how his faith was the thing that let him know that that wasn't the end for him. And in that moment, just thinking about what Daniel must have felt, I started to realize that I felt that same way. Because the lions can be different things. In Daniel's case, the lions were real lions. But in some of our cases, lions can be problems, it could be obstacles, it could be fear, it can be anxiety, it can be a lot of different things, whatever that lion might be in your life. And so I remember, actually it was a few years ago, back in 2019, I had not realized it at that particular point in time, but I had been struggling with a multi-year depression that started in early 2017, late 2016, but mostly early 2017. And when I look back at the pictures of me in 2017, it's obvious I was not okay. Obvious I was not okay. But yet I would smile in the pictures, like, hi, smile. I would, put on my best face to be able to go out and do the things that I needed to do. But inwardly, I was struggling, just really struggling. And it came to a head for me in 2019. And it got to the point where I was in so much pain. I was suffering so much that I couldn't take it anymore. I was at my breaking point because for years, even before the birth of my kids, I was just dealing with pain between workplace bullying, between experienced date rape, between, when I was pregnant, everything that I went through with their dad walking out, to even having a traumatic birth and literally having to fight for my kids' lives in the hospital, for being shamed in the hospital, for my decision to breastfeed instead of formula feeding. I was literally shamed by one of the chief pediatricians in the hospital. And in 2019, just after experiencing setback after setback, after pain, and having to continue to push through, because that's what you do, you just push through the pain. And what it meant for me was not acknowledging the pain. What it meant for me was just continuing to press on with a smile on my face and covering up and burying the pain deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, just to be able to make it through. And in 2019, I was literally at my breaking point where I could not take any more pain. I could not take any more heartache. I could not take any more disappointment. I was literally at my breaking point. And bear with me if I cry. This is very difficult for me to acknowledge publicly. I've said it in more private, intimate settings, but to be able to share it this publicly, is new. It is difficult. But like I said, I recognize according to Revelations 12:11 that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by our testimony, so that somebody else, and almost every time I share this story, somebody comes up to me and says that, thank you for sharing, because it really helped them, because they've either understood where I've been at or they're dealing with it right now. And so the Lord laid it so strongly on my heart to be able to share this with you, because I don't know who is struggling with this. I don't know who's on the verge of giving up. And if my testimony of overcoming and pushing through convince you to hold on to life a little bit longer, then it's worth the fear and the shame for sharing this. But good thing I don't have my mascara today. But I remember in 2019, I was literally at my breaking point. I couldn't take it anymore. And the thing is, when you're strong, so check on your strong friends. When you're strong, everyone assumes that you're okay. If you smile, people assume that you're okay. If you still make jokes, people assume that you're okay. If you show up and continue to walk according to the way that people are used to, people assume that you're okay. But sometimes the activity, sometimes the workload, sometimes the smile is what's needed just to keep on going and not acknowledge the pain. Sometimes that's just what it is. And for me as a mom, I was so determined not to fail my kids. I was so determined not to fail my kids. But in 2019, the enemy was just in my mind so heavy, convincing me that I was a failure as a mom. And the one thing that I was determined not to fail at was the one thing that I was feeling like such a failure in. And because, at this point, I was not really working as much on my business. I had actually put one of them down for a few years, and I really wasn't doing that. So being able to feel good in terms of my accomplishments, in terms of my work, I just really wasn't there doing those things like I used to do. So that piece, that identity of me, that hard worker, that perfectionist, that hard driving achiever piece wasn't there for me to fall back on. And so without the things that we make our identity, that we place our identity in, at that point, I didn't know who I was. So I had given up my dreams, which I actually created another video to talk about how I had given up my dreams, and I didn't even realize that I had stopped dreaming. But that was a consequence of the depression. And so at this point, I had given up my dreams. I was just struggling emotionally. I was struggling mentally, and I was just trying to keep everything together. And then I felt like I was a failure as a mom. And so when those feelings of feeling like a failure as a mom started to come in, the last thing that was holding me together to stop me from falling apart, my just deep desire not to fail my kids, all of a sudden I felt like that was being taken away from me as well, because of the enemy's voice in my head telling me that I was a failure and that I failed my kids. And it got so bad that I couldn't even pray anymore. I would get up and I would pray. I would get up to pray, and I would just sit there. No words would come out, and I would just sit there. And then over time, just that sitting there became me staring at my wrist, imagining what it would be like to leave this earth and not have to deal with the pain anymore, because I could no longer take the pain. And so whereas a lot of people, we see our vision board parties, we envision what our lives would be like. We envision what we hope that we want and our dreams and our goals. For me, it turned into something so morbid. I started to envision what it would be like to leave this earth and not have to deal with the pain. I would envision what it would be like to commit suicide in a way that didn't traumatize my kids and leave them broken for the rest of my life, for their lives. I began to dream about how it would be like to really experience the promise of not having to deal with any more pain and any more suffering. And that would be the thing that I would dream about, throughout that day, it would bring me joy to dream about like what it was to not have to think about the pain and the suffering that I was going through at that time. And it got so bad that I started to think that my kids were better off without me. And that the best thing for me to do would be to step aside and let someone else who was more qualified than me to raise them. Because all I could see during that time was all the ways that I felt like I had failed, all the mistakes that I made, all the things that I didn't do right. And that was the only thing that really that I saw. And then I would picture, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And so I thought that I would be doing them a favor by stepping out the way. And what I realized is that some of what I was feeling and some of what I was going through, sorry, I'm looking for a tissue, was definitely the voice of the enemy, but also, hold on one second. But also, okay, so I have a tissue. But also the voice of their dad when he was trying to pressure me to have an abortion. And he was saying all of this stuff to me about how I would fail as a mom. I would fail my kids. And I realized that the enemy, the devil, was using his voice to plant thoughts in my head of inadequacy, unworthiness, shame, to ultimately take me out. And after battling that for a number of years, my strength and my resolve to keep on going was leaving me. I just couldn't take it anymore. And so I would think about, how I would just kiss my kids on the head and apologize to them that I wasn't stronger, that I wasn't better, that I would pray over them, that they will live a long and fruitful life, and that they would be in good hands with who would raise them after me, and just apologize that I wasn't better. I would just think about those things, and the enemy would keep telling me that they would be better off if I was no longer in the picture. And I remember God said, I got to the point where I couldn't pray anymore, and it started to scare me. It started to scare me because I didn't like to feel like that. And I remember calling my sister and saying, I don't like how I feel. I can't even pray anymore. Can you just please pray for me? I can't. I just don't even have the words anymore. I just can't. I don't have the words anymore. And she would pray for me. And I would get off the phone and I would still be struggling. And I remember one day God said, if you do this, who is going to raise your kids? And I said, I know who's going to raise my kids. I already have guardianship papers. Like, I know who's going to raise my kids. I know who will have them if I'm no longer here. And he said, I gave you your kids for a reason. If you do this, who is going to raise your kids? And I chose you. And I was like, well, you got a good point there, Lord. I didn't really have an answer to that. And so that gave me the confidence to keep on going, to keep on striving, to keep on getting back up, and to keep on leaning on my support system. When I couldn't pray, I would call my sister or someone else to say, I need you to stand in the gap for me. I need you to pray until I have the words to be able to pray. Again, I need you to pray. And eventually, God healed me. God redeemed me. I was able to get into therapy. And I was able to realize that what I was hearing, what I was believing was a lie. It was a lie. It was a lie designed to take me out. It was a lie to take my kids out effectively. By taking me out, they wouldn't have had the person in their life who God ordained for them to be their mom. And it was a lie. Like, there was no way that I could commit suicide and not be traumatic to my kids, which is probably why it took so long because I could never quite figure it out. I was just like, how can I do this? Where I went and traumatized him, and I could never quite figure it out. And I was not going to do it if I thought it was going to traumatize him. But what I can say, what I learned through this, I gotta blow my nose here, is that God is real. God is real, and that He is mighty to save. And even though it terrifies me to be able to share this story publicly, I'm sorry, nose is running a little bit. Even though it scares me to share this story publicly, I realize that shame is a form of bondage. And if we allow the enemy to keep us trapped in shame and bondage, we can never be free to do the work that God has called us to do. So for those of you who are worried, I am no longer dealing with suicidal ideation. I am delivered. I am free. The Lord has brought me joy. He has redeemed me. I am happy. I no longer struggle with that. Okay. So just in case you're worried, I wanted to be very clear about that. But the guilt of having those thoughts, the shame associated with those thoughts, those were the things that were keeping me captive still. And I never wanted to admit it because of my own shame around being in that dark place. But I recognize that I'm not the only one who has struggled with that. I am not the only one who has been in so much pain that you imagine living life without pain and struggle with ending your own to no longer having to feel that pain. And so I'm saying this, I'm making this video to give you hope, to let you know not to give up, to let you know that God has a purpose and plan for you. And if you need help, to call someone. Lean on the Word of God. Lean on your support system. Don't give up. Don't give up. There's more for you. Even though you feel that you might be in a valley of the valley of valleys, there is still a mountaintop. There is still a mountaintop if you just hold on. And so if me conquering this feeling of shame and going live and recording this video gives you the hope to keep on going, then it's worth it for me. It's worth it for me. So lay it all bare and expose one of my deepest areas of shame if it means it'll save your life. If it means that your family won't have to live without you. If it means that your children don't have to live without you. Keep on going. And I remember when I was pregnant and my twins' dad was trying to force me to have an abortion. And I was at my breaking point. And I was just so tired of just trying to fight for my pregnancy. And I was so afraid about what it would mean for my finances as an entrepreneur, for my life. I was afraid about what it would mean. I remember picking up the phone to call an abortion clinic, and praise Jesus, they did not answer the phone. Praise Jesus, they did not answer the phone. It stopped me from making one of the biggest mistake of my life. I remember when they didn't answer the phone, I ended up going to Bible study that day, and the pastor was teaching on the topic. He was talking on the topic of storms. And he said, never make a permanent decision based upon temporary circumstances. And I realized that the fear that I felt around when I knew that I was going to be a single mom, I realized that the fear that I felt around what it would mean for my finances. I realized the fear that I felt around what it would mean for me, for my hopes, my dreams, full-time entrepreneurship, being able to, lean into what I was doing, what I was really excited about, which was building my business and building that being that boss chick, right? I realized that all of those fears, the fears about what my family would say, the fears about what friends would say, the fears of if I would still be accepted or if we would be okay, I realized that all of that was temporary. But what was permanent would be ending the pregnancy. I could never go back and undo that. And that sermon gave me the strength to be able to continue on with my pregnancy. That word that I heard from the Lord, like when the Bible says that the Lord speaks, he does. He does. If you open your ears to be able to hear, if you open your eyes to be able to see the signs, he speaks all the time. And what I heard from him that day was, if you do this, who will raise your kids? That word gave me the courage to fight another day. My family, who didn't even know I was struggling with suicidal ideation, just by them being there for me, gave me the strength to keep on going. The kind words that people would say to me, random people would see me in the grocery store or some random place with my kids or on the playground and say, you know what? You're a great mom. So don't ignore the urges that you feel to say a kind word to someone else. You don't know what that person is struggling with. And you don't know if that kind word is the difference between them fighting to live another day and giving up. And so I pray that this blesses you. I pray that if you're struggling to get help, I pray that if you are ever feeling shame, and I pray that if you're ever struggling with the desire to commit suicide, I pray that you listen to my testimony and know that there is hope, to know that there is joy, to know that there is peace if you just keep going. And if you're struggling, to know that God is real. He is. The Bible promises that there is no place that you can go, no dark valley, no nothing that you can go where God is not there. He promises to meet you in your darkest places. He promises you to meet you in your darkest fears. He promises you to be there. Just like he was there for Daniel in the lion's den, where Daniel was shut in a den with lions who were hungry, who had not eaten in months, who were ready to tear his flesh apart from him, who are ready to consume you. It might feel like you're in a space where you feel like you're going to be consumed. But I promise you that if you keep on holding on, and keep on trusting and keep on believing and refusing to give up, there is joy at the end of that dark tunnel. And there is a mountaintop at the top of that valley if you don't give up. So yes, that is it. I just wanted to speak from the heart for you today. And I pray that this blesses you. And I pray that you're healed, you're delivered, and you never, ever, ever give up. Your children are counting on you. The world needs you. And if you're struggling, be committed to healing. It's taken years for me. It's taken years. But the journey to healing is worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. All right. So that is it. That is it. Thank you so much for joining. Let me know how this blesses you. The Lord has been calling me to talk more openly about how he has been a father to me. And so make sure you're subscribed, have your notifications on, so that way you know when I drop a new video. And I just pray that these videos bless you. All right. Usually I have something else like more, to close everything out, but I think I'm just out of words right now. So, so we're just going to end this. So thank you so much for tuning in.